North Korea's Kim Jong-un has laid out plans to, quote, exponentially increase the country's nuclear weapons, according to state media KCNA on Tuesday. They quoted a speech Kim gave the day before to mark North Korea's founding anniversary. KCNA also reported that a so-called nuclear force construction policy is in the works, which it says would allow Pyongyang to more thoroughly prepare, quote, nuclear capability and its readiness to use it properly at any given time and ensuring the security rights of the state. Kim, in his speech, emphasized the need for a strong military to counter threats from the US and its allies, citing a grave threat from a US-led nuclear military bloc in the region. Germany last month joined the United Nations Command, which is led by the United States and South Korea. That move heightened tensions with the North, which denounces the border monitoring force for being what it calls an illegal war organization. The state media reports of Kim's speech came hours ahead of a meeting of the defense ministers of the UN Command member states in the south.
Australia plans to set a minimum age requirement for social media use due to health concerns, but digital rights groups warn it might drive harmful behaviour underground. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said his government will run an age verification trial before setting rules later this year. He didn't specify an age, but said it would probably be between 14 and 16.
Well, we're listening to parents and listening to the community, and I want to see kids off their devices and onto the footy fields and the swimming pools and the tennis courts. We want them to have real experiences with real people, because we know that social media is causing social harm. So what we've done is put money in the budget in May for a trial.
The law would make Australia one of the first countries to set a minimum age. Similar efforts, like those by the EU, have failed due to concerns about limiting minors' online rights. Meta, owner of Facebook and Instagram, says it aims to help youth benefit from its platforms and support parents rather than just restrict access. According to government and industry data, Australia has one of the world's most online populations, with 80% of its 26 million people on social media. A 2023 study found that 75% of Australians aged 12 to 17 had used YouTube or Instagram. Albanese announced the age restriction plan during a parliamentary inquiry into social media's impact on teens' mental health.
This is a scourge. We know that there is mental health consequences for what many of the young people have had to deal with. The bullying that can occur online, the access to material which causes social harm.
The inquiry raised concerns about enforcing a lower age limit and whether it might harm young people by pushing them to hide their online activity. In June, Australia's e-Safety Commissioner warned that age restrictions might limit young people's access to crucial support and drive them to less regulated services. The body said it would work with government and community groups to improve Australia's approach to online harms affecting safety on platforms at any age.
Thief, thief, shouts a protester as the convoy of vehicles carrying the man who led the central bank for decades enters a Beirut courthouse. Riyad Salameh was for years celebrated as a financial wizard. But on Monday he was ordered by a judge to remain in detention during an investigation into alleged financial crimes. Salameh came under scrutiny after the catastrophic collapse of Lebanon's financial system in 2019, which plunged more than 80% of the population into poverty. His 3 decades in charge of the central bank ended last year, his reputation in tatters. He was arrested last week on charges that state media said included embezzlement, theft of public funds, forgery and illicit enrichment. Salameh's media office has said he would not comment publicly on the case, in line with the law. He has denied previous corruption charges. These charges sparked outrage from citizens whose funds were frozen in Lebanese banks. A lawyer representing them said Salameh entering court in handcuffs was a relief for Lebanese people. If Salameh faces prosecution, it would mark a rare case of a serving or retired senior Lebanese official facing accountability in a system critics say has long shielded the elite. Let them fall like dominoes, says this protester. Judicial sources told Reuters Salameh was suspected of accruing more than $110 million through financial crimes using a Lebanese firm called Optimum Invest. His office said in a statement he had cooperated in the past with more than 20 criminal probes and was cooperating with this investigation. Several European countries, including France and Germany, have been investigating whether tens of millions of dollars of the funds allegedly embezzled from the central bank were laundered in Europe.
Charred remains of a vehicle and blackened, smoking earth marked the aftermath of what the Syrian government on Monday said were Israeli airstrikes the night before. Syria's health minister said the attacks killed at least 18 people and wounded dozens of others. Syrian state news agency Sana showed images of what it said were those wounded getting treatment. It cited a military source that Syrian air defenses had shot down some of the missiles. Two regional intelligence sources said a major military research center for chemical arms had been hit several times. They said it was believed to house a team of Iranian military experts involved in weapons production. There was no immediate comment from Israel, which typically remains silent on reports of strikes in Syria. It is the deadliest strike reported by the Syrian government since the Iranian embassy compound in Damascus was hit in April. Israel has for years been targeting what it described as Iranian or Iran-backed targets in Syria. It has stepped up the campaign since the October 7th Hamas-led assault on Israel from Gaza, after which Iranian-backed Hezbollah fighters began firing rockets into Israel from Lebanon. A residential building in northern Israel was hit by a projectile on Monday after air raid sirens blared across the border town of Nahariya. Israeli media reported the building was hit by a drone launched from Lebanon. The strikes came a day after Israel's defense minister Yoav Gallant visited troops in Gaza City, telling them, quote, "We are preparing for anything that can happen in the north," and saying that they could be redeployed on a short schedule.
Germany's government says it is implementing temporary controls at all of the country's land borders in an attempt to tackle irregular migration and protect the public. The controls are set to begin on September 16th and last for 6 months. Nancy Faeser is the country's interior minister.
I have ordered this today and have already informed the EU. This will serve to further limit irregular migration and protect against the acute dangers posed by Islamist terror and serious crime. We are doing everything we can to better protect the people in our country against this. This includes the far-reaching measures I am taking now.
Germany has hardened its stance on migration in recent years, and the government is scrambling to retake the initiative after support for the far-right Alternative for Germany, or AfD, has surged over the issue. Recent deadly knife attacks where the suspects were asylum seekers have stoked concerns over immigration. The Islamic State group claimed responsibility for a knife attack that killed 3 people in August. The announcement comes after the AfD became the first far-right party since World War II to win a state election earlier this month. And 2 weeks ahead of an election in Brandenburg, where Chancellor Olaf Scholz and Faeser's center-left Social Democrats are fighting to retain control of the government. Germany shares this more than 2,300-mile land border with Denmark, the Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, France, Switzerland, Austria, the Czech Republic, and Poland.
1,000 miles from Moscow is the Serbian capital of Belgrade, a place a vibrant community of Russians now call home, part of a wave of tens of thousands who left their motherland after its invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. Vadim Morus is one of them. The ice skater was able to settle in easily thanks to his professional skills.
My first day at the skating rink, when I started working, people immediately approached me asking me to help their children with training, and I said, of course. Therefore, right from the very beginning, I started meeting Serbs and establishing some interaction.
But not everyone is integrating with the locals, as a mini Russia springs up in Belgrade, a city with ancient cultural and religious ties to Moscow. After the war began, up till mid-2023, more than 30,000 Russians registered for temporary residence in Serbia, according to the latest government data. It's a sharp increase compared with before, officials said. Many of the émigrés, fleeing conflict, conscription or the politics of President Vladimir Putin, were seen queuing to vote at the embassy earlier this year in Russia's election. Fewer Russians are moving to Serbia than to countries like Germany, but their presence is acutely felt in Belgrade, a city of under 2 million people. A whole range of Russian-owned businesses have sprung up, and many Russians shop at Russian stores and eat at Russian restaurants. Psychologist Michelle Dia, who also left because of the war, said many of her fellow Russians don't feel the need to go outside their community.
As it appears, all their social needs have been fulfilled. You walk through the centre and you always hear Russian people, 4 or 5 times in an hour of walking. And you can choose a restaurant with Russians, sit in a place with Russians. So many of them immediately organised themselves into a small Russian settlement.
But she added that the stresses of fleeing their homeland meant it has been difficult for many others to settle in. I see Russians that are not even interacting with other Russians, she said. Ties between Serbia and Russia date back centuries and remain cordial today, although Serbia is trying to join the European Union, which condemns Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Serbian political scientist Aleksandar Djokic was teaching in Russia until the war broke out. He said the new arrivals, many of whom are experts in fields such as IT, could be a boost to Serbia's economy, even if they did not choose to integrate with wider society. But Djokic added, this wave of émigrés won't have the same cultural impact compared to a century ago, when artists and architects arrived as part of the anti-communist, so-called White Russians, fleeing the civil war.
As the summer comes to an end,
Britain's Princess Kate said on Monday she had finished her course of preventative chemotherapy for cancer. Kensington Palace released this video conveying a personal message from the Princess of Wales, who appears with her husband, Prince William, and their 3 young children, George, Louis and Charlotte. The 42-year-old wife of the heir to Britain's throne underwent major abdominal surgery in January, which revealed the presence of cancer. Kate said the treatment gave her a new perspective.
This time has above all reminded William and me to reflect and be grateful for the simple yet important things in life, which so many of us often take for granted, of simply loving and being loved.
In the video, filmed in Norfolk, eastern England last month, Kate said she would be carrying out a handful of public engagements later this year, but that her path to full recovery would be long. She has made only a couple of public appearances since her health issues emerged. Kensington Palace has declined to give any further details about the type of cancer or specific details about her treatment.
Typhoon Yagi left dozens dead in northern Vietnam as it barreled westwards, preliminary government estimates showed on Monday. The country's infrastructure has also been hit by Asia's most powerful storm of this year, as the weather agency warned of more floods and landslides. Widespread damage could be seen in the Vietnamese capital Hanoi on Monday, with downed trees covering the streets and signs ripped from their hoardings. The typhoon swept across Vietnam's northeastern coast on Saturday, cutting power to millions, flooding highways and disrupting telecommunications networks. This usually busy bridge in Phu Tho province was swept away. Authorities said initial investigations suggested there were 8 vehicles on the bridge when it collapsed. Despite being downgraded to a tropical depression on Sunday, Yagi has brought a halt to economic activity in many industrial hubs. Managers and workers at industrial parks and factories in Hai Phong, a coastal city of 2 million, said on Monday that power was out and equipment was being salvaged from the rain. These pictures show an LG electronics factory, the walls of which collapsed following the typhoon's impact. Local resident Bui Van Thuy began cleaning up the damage to his shop on Sunday.
The damage done to this community is extremely severe. Most of the roof was blown away or the ceiling caved in. It may take 3 to 4 years for this place to look the same again because the damage is so terrible. The surroundings look like an apocalypse. Never before has a storm dealt this much damage to us.
State-run power provider EVN said 75% of the 5.7 million customers that lost power over the weekend now had electricity restored.
Kenya's finance minister has said the government will seek suggestions from the public on new legislation to tackle the country's struggling finances. That's after demonstrators forced the government to withdraw its previous finance law. In June, President William Ruto discarded tax hikes worth more than $2.7 billion amid protests that killed more than 50 people. But that move has left the heavily indebted government with a bigger budget deficit for this financial year, mounting pending bills, and a delay in funding from the International Monetary Fund. On Monday, Finance Minister John Mbadi told a budget preparation meeting that we are barely managing. He was appointed from the opposition last month as Ruto sought to stabilise his government. Mbadi initially proposed reviving some tax hikes from the abandoned finance bill, but rode back after a public outcry and the threat of more protests. He's now said he would be issuing a circular inviting the public to submit proposals on some legislative reforms to improve our current economic situation. Kenyans will have until September 20th to submit their views.
An intense battle is underway in the southern US state of Georgia for the black voters who make up a third of the state. Its highest proportion of any of the crucial battleground states for the November 5th presidential election.
Who would you mostly likely to vote for?
These canvassers are combing the city of Savannah with the New Georgia Project Action Fund, a group founded by the state's black Democratic star Stacey Abrams. Swing states like Georgia, which Democrats barely won in 2020, are fiercely contested because they play a key role in deciding the election outcome. Here's campaigner William Bryant.
A lot of people in the areas that I go to, some of them don't really understand about the state turning from red to blue, and then you have to educate them. I just keep them abreast to what's going on, and so forth in the political area and also in the community area.
Opinion polls in Georgia show Donald Trump and Kamala Harris neck and neck, a significant turnaround from early July when Trump led Joe Biden by 6 percentage points. Trump lost to Biden by fewer than 12,000 votes in the 2020 election. The former president's goal to pull in more black support has not only been complicated by Harris entering the race, but also by Republican-backed voting restrictions, which activists claim target people of color, something the party denies. Voter Demetrius Hall says he's backing Harris.
If he wins the election, he's going to do exactly what he said. He's going to be a dictator, but if he loses, then he's talking about a bloodbath, so yeah, I don't know.
Trump's campaign was once so confident it could win in Georgia, it only spent $3 million in ad buys within the state. Now, it splashed out more than $30 million on ads there in response to Harris, outpacing her campaign spending in August. Both campaigns are set to invest more than $37 million each in Georgia by Election Day. Ads from the Trump campaign are mostly negative, attacking Harris on inflation and border issues. Harris is running ads promoting plans to lower drug prices, tax large corporations and the ultra-wealthy to pay for housing, and tax breaks for working parents. Harris's campaign said it had been reaching out to black voters across Georgia since day one. But 36-year-old Chris Edwards says he thinks she isn't offering a solution or a plan.
The only thing she's offering is a cute little slogan to get people riled up, but she's not giving any type of blueprint of what we can expect if she becomes president. And to me, that's a problem.
A Trump victory in Georgia would lessen the pressure for him to win in key Midwestern states, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin.
Dozens of people were killed on Sunday in a fuel tanker explosion in north-central Nigeria, officials have said. The Disaster Management Agency in Niger State said the tanker had collided with a truck carrying travelers and cattle. A spokesperson put the death toll at 48 and said officials were still trying to clear the scene. One emergency worker said they didn't know how many animals were involved and were still trying to extract them from the wreckage. Several other vehicles were also caught up in the accident, the Disaster Management Agency said.